Hello, everyone. Welcome to another health assessment where we are talking about the health of our careers and what we might want to go into in the future. Today, we are talking about PA school. So I have gotten a ton of questions about how did you know you wanted to go to PA school or NP school? I'm a nurse practitioner, so I obviously chose the NP route. But today we have a guest who is choosing the PA route, and I'm super excited to have you guys meet here. And we're going to ask her a ton of questions. If you're also kind of trying to decide, do I want to go PA? Do I want to go NP? And all the nuances within there. So hello and welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Mira Bhattacharya and I am an incoming physician assistant student. So I started out as an EMT when I was 18 years old, and I'll probably delve into that a little more later. And I did volunteer EMS in the Bronx in New York City while in college, student EMS organization. And since then, I've continued to do EMS in non-traditional settings. I've worked as a set medic in the film industry, a summer camp EMT. I've also been a home health aide for an Alzheimer's patient. And I have a strong interest in public health policy and law as well. I worked on the New York City Mayor Adams transition team with our deputy health commissioner, just trying to write policy initiatives into place. And I'm about to start PA school. Sadly, waitlisted at my top choice right now, but that's okay. And I really was stuck between the NP and the PA route for a long time, but happy to share my journey with you guys.
Oh, and we're so excited to have you here. Also, you've done everything. So just massive congratulations to you. I feel like just very impressed and very lucky to be able to get to talk to you with all of that. When did so you were deciding between NP and PA. Can you just take us back to kind of when you were what kind of gave you the inkling of I think I want to go and become an APP or an advanced practice provider? And when, just the inklings of how you kind of made that beginning choice.
Absolutely.
Also, super congratulations on getting into PA school, because that's one of the hardest things in the entire world, which we'll talk about.
Oh, thank you. No, that means a lot to me. So I am 22, so I've tried to fit a lot into
My
a
gosh.
short
You really have. Holy cow.
But I started off actually, my mom's a special ed teacher, but my father was a physician. Came here from India. He did his medical school in India. Came here, did a pediatric residency in Michigan. I know you're from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, scrap that, did an anesthesiology residency in New York City. And I was born the week he finished residency, basically. But that's sort of where I got into healthcare a little bit. But I came into college a pre-med, realized that wasn't for me. I have ADHD and my interests are sort of all over the place. Every day I want to explore my new hyperfixation. And so I felt like as an APP, I would have more freedom to do that. And some people may say, why not nursing? And I was also really drawn to nursing, but I already started a non-nursing bachelor's, and my school did not have a BSN program, and I didn't want to transfer schools. And I also really liked being in the role of a provider. So I wanted to do that. And I know that with NP, you do get to do that as well. But I didn't want to have to get my ABSN and then progress on to a MSN, or now it's moving into the DNP. I know every year they say it's going to become a DNP. Yeah. Not quite there yet.
Not there yet.
I saw that and realized I wanted a little bit more of a direct route.
I love that, because I think there's always a huge rivalry between NP and PA. I'm we're half siblings here. If you really look at how this is working, we really could work together. And I think so. I have no beef with PAs. I've gotten a lot of flack before for that, but I think PAs are awesome. I have a lot of videos of kind of picking between the two. So I'll leave those linked down below as well, just to give some context. But I love what you said about being switching your mind partway through, because I think a lot of people switch their mind partway through. And then, like you said, you're kind of stuck if your school doesn't have a nursing program, or even if they do, if you kind of want to be a PA, or a provider, a lot of times I'm just go do the PA thing then, because like you said, it offers so much flexibility. You can work in a ton of different departments. And just in case people aren't familiar with being able to hop around in the US, at least in our medical system, Mira, your dad, you have to do a specialty residency that plugs you into
sometimes
one
after that things. You do fellowship as well.
Yeah, so you're in that lane and you can't decide, oh, I actually want to go work in dermatology if you are a anesthesiologist or a pediatrician. So with advanced practice providers, we have the ability to hop between kind of, as long as it's a little different for nurse practitioners and PAs, but PAs really can go into anything. So I always encourage people, if you are unsure, like, go be a PA, because PAs can wear any hat, like literally any, and it's awesome.
So just to hop back to what you were saying about suggesting PA for certain reasons over NP, I do want to say that there are two caveats to that. So one of them is I had a strong interest in hospice and palliative care, and I did my senior college thesis on that. And there are certain specialties that are currently, so to speak, NP dominated or PA dominated.
Yeah.
So while NPs and PAs can work in a lot of different specialties, like they both can, there are certain ones that tend to hire NPs more and certain ones that PAs are better suited for, not to stereotype. Like I think that in surgery, you tend to see more PAs, but there are surgical NPs who I've met who are incredible. And then on the vice versa, I think things like hospice and palliative actually tend to be more NP dominated. Unfortunately, Medicare will not currently reimburse for the face-to-face visits for PAs, but they will for NPs and physicians. And that's why I eventually want to get my JD and sort of like break down the barriers for both like NP and PA reimbursements. But
and let us order diabetic shoes.
Yes,
nurse practitioners can't order those.
A friend of mine is a podiatrist, and he's complained about that as well.
Yeah, like it's the stupid little thing. So I'm super excited for your future, and you're going to go change the world, and I'm ready. And I'll just complain about it on the internet.
Also, the only other thing I will say is, and I might get some backlash from the PA community, but that's okay. I think that in psych, the one thing is that if you know you want to do psych and you're really locked on to that, I'm going to be fully disclosed and say I'd rather see a psych NP than a PA any day. And I'll say this because in the psych NP program, although not all psych NPs choose to incorporate psychotherapy into their practice, there is, in some more than other programs, psychotherapy training included, which I really like. I see a psych NP for both therapy and medication management, and I like having somebody who's kind of all wrapped into one. Whereas psych PAs can do a little bit of that, but they're coordinating with a therapist, kind of like a psychiatrist. And I personally wouldn't want to work in psych just doing medication management, but that's my own personal preference. And I would never discourage anybody from becoming a psychiatric PA.
Yeah, and that's a really good distinction. And that kind of goes with what I usually counsel people is, if you know you really want a specific thing and there is a specialty within nurse practitioner and you're already kind of plugged into that, that can be helpful because all of school for the psych NPs is psych. If you're like dead set on women's health, all of it is going to be women's health. But that being said, like you said, there are phenomenal psych and women's health PAs that I know that went into it and they're just fine. So I think it all depends, like you said, on your preference for what do you want to get out of it and how do you want to practice. So that's awesome. So you decided you want to be a PA. What did you do to get your healthcare hours? So you said you were an EMT and you worked in home health. Can you touch on those just like a little bit and your non-traditional EMS experience?
Yes. So I actually found out about the PA profession while doing volunteer EMS because one of the girls on the squad was applying to PA school. And I was like, ooh, what you writing over there? And she's like, just my personal statement last minute.
That's awesome.
So I started out doing volunteer EMS. My college paid for me to go to EMT school, which was about like $4,000 to $5,000, which is great. Sweet. They also paid for my BLS certification. So I was able to get my BLS provider, which is, if people don't know, it's like a CPR certificate. And then I'm also a BLS instructor, so I can teach CPR classes as well, which I know some RNs do as a side hustle as well.
Yeah. And with your school paying for it, was that like kind of like a program within the university, or is that something that other people could look at too?
I went to Fordham University. Also, I always tell people, look at your local volunteer EMS squad. Sometimes if you volunteer for like a year or something, they'll pay for your EMS. Yeah. So I got that, and they even paid for my recertification, which would have been like $2,000 otherwise.
That's awesome. And how long is that training?
The training, so it took me like a semester. So I was there from like January to like May. It was a couple times a week. I know that they sometimes have like accelerated EMT courses that are maybe like 2 months, 3 months, but those are really fast.
Yeah, that seems really
I did also home health aid as well, but I wasn't a licensed home health aid, but I was hired because somebody in my neighborhood had early stage Alzheimer's, and the wife was a nurse, so she trusted that with like 3 years of EMS experience, I could be a decent home health aid.
Yeah, I would also count on that with you. I think that's a fairly astute assessment. So then how did you get hooked up with your job where you're like I don't know, is medic the right term or not?
So yeah, we call them set medics
Okay.
in the film industry.
Okay.
We are EMTs, and I would never disclose to be anything we're not. Just like, you know, if you're not a physician, it's a doctor, say,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
psychotherapy. But sorry, what were you saying?
How did you get involved in that? Like, I'm interested in how different that job is than, because traditionally, if people aren't familiar, usually EMTs, you're working on ambulances. You're the first responder. You're going to all of those calls. And this is obviously a very different background
Oh,
that you got
yes,
into.
sure. So, like I said, set medic is what we call them in the film industry, but we're EMTs. They just like to call us a weird term. But I got
Okay.
into that because my first paid EMS job after I got my volunteer experience, which before going on your own in EMS and working in places where you're the only EMT, please get experience. It's just like nurse practitioners who start off their own practice. Like, you always want to
Hmm.
work with somebody first. And that's where some of this, stuff gets a bad rep because of people
Hmm.
abusing the privileges and not gaining their experience properly. So my first
For sure.
paid EMS job, I was 18. Yeah, 18 years old, 18 or 19, and I got hired as a summer camp EMT for a sleepaway camp for homeless children in the middle of the woods in upstate New York. I was hired to be a nursing aide. Found out they couldn't afford a nurse like 2 weeks before camp started. Ran a clinic of 80 children and 50 staff members. I had kids that tried to kill themselves, unfortunately.
Oh my
I had kids on
gosh.
Haldol and Risperdal. Um, it was really crazy. And I had one social work student. That was the only support that I was provided. And it was a really bad working environment, to be
Yeah, that's
honest.
like throwing you into a fire.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
So
the
you can
social
do
work
like
student got
anything
so
now.
sick he ended up in the hospital, so we kind of lost him at one point.
Oh
And the
my
camp had no
gosh.
clean drinking water. I lived in India as a baby, but I was born here. But even that was better than what I had at the camp. And long story short, it was like, I need to get myself out of this place. Like, I can't keep doing this. So I
Yeah.
said, like, what can I do as an EMT who doesn't have a driving license? And set
Yeah.
medic came up. So I started like contracting with all these like 1099 places and just started. My first gig was Blues Clues with
That's so cool.
the new Blues Clues. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's super awesome. And I think just points out really well, like how I know with like everything that's going on, a lot of people are reevaluating a lot of healthcare things. And I think it really points out that like there are so many options, even within things like EMT, like everything like that has so many weird little fun intricacies that you can go into that you would never really
Also,
think of.
concert EMS. If you're a broke college student who wants to go see Billy, I met Billy Joel for free. I met Madonna. I
Oh
worked
my
Jonas Brothers.
gosh. I want your life.
And it was just
Like,
fun. Like, I was like, okay, I can't afford to see the concert, but if I just sign up to work in Madison Square Garden because I have the privilege of living in New York City, I can just see all these
yeah.
concerts for free.
Oh, that's so genius. I love that. Oh, I love it.
And even
Okay.
doctors would sometimes work like a Jimmy Kimmel show just so that they could see him for
Yeah,
free.
that's awesome. I would totally do that. Okay, so you got a ton of healthcare experience that way. Can you let everyone know how many hours of, so when you're applying to PA school, there's a bunch of requirements, which we can kind of talk about now. What are you have to have healthcare hours, if I understand correctly. How many hours do you need? And like what other requirements were there that you needed in order to just apply to PA school?
Sure. So everyone's probably going to hate me for this, but I always say check with each individual program.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm sure similar to nursing schools, there's like a little bit of differences. Like some programs might require, say a microbio, whereas other programs may
Yep.
not require that. Each PA program has its own unique set of admissions requirements, although they're pretty similar. So there's a difference in between hours, something called patient care hours and healthcare experience hours. So patient care hours means you're directly responsible for caring for a patient. Maybe you're a CNA helping to feed a patient, or you're a home health aide, helping to, I don't know, do the ADLs with the patient and remind them to take
Hmm.
their medication. Versus a healthcare experience means you're still working in healthcare, but you're not directly caring for patients. So my work with the Mayor Adams transition team and our uh, health team with that's still healthcare work, but I wasn't directly
Hmm.
caring for patients. I was helping to draft, recommendations to articulate to the mayor so that he could, actually support
Yeah.
APPs being used to their fullest extent possible. And that's different.
Yeah.
They're both important, but some PA schools, they tend to, in general, don't require healthcare experience. It's more like
Okay.
if you have it, put it on your application. It's just you would label it as healthcare, not patient care. Most
Okay.
PA schools do require patient care experience. I've seen as
Mhm.
low as 100 hours, and I've seen as high. I think Mercy in Detroit requires about 2,000 hours.
Yeah, that's what
And
I've
I
seen a
think
lot
that's
of, like,
great because a
2,000.
lot of times some NPs will come at PAs for saying that they don't have that hands-on experience, whereas I know that a lot of NPs have that RN experience. And I'll be honest, I didn't have RN experience, but I think that I still have patient care experience in another
Yeah.
capacity that's still legitimate.
Oh, for sure. And I talk about that all the time with, I would rather, if I was seeing someone as a provider, I would rather see if I had a PA that was fresh out of school or someone that went through a direct entry NP program, I would rather see the PA because the PA at least had a ton of hours before
Oh
they went
yeah,
to
we
PA
have to
school.
do rotations, so
And then you
many.
have so many more clinical hours than nurse practitioners. So I think that's awesome that they require it. And I wish nursing would kind of implement like, hey, you have to take, like, you have to kind of
Well,
do an
CRNA
equal
school is now doing that.
amount of
I know that
hours.
they've eliminated the emergency room experience. You actually have to do the ICU like 2-3
Hmm.
years.
Yeah, which I think makes sense. So
Yeah.
I wish we were a little bit more strict across the board on that.
The other types of hours that are required are a lot of programs require volunteer hours, and you
Oh, I
need to
didn't know
look.
that.
So some require non-medical volunteer hours, some require medical, some require both. So for example, SUNY Downstate here in New York, they require at least 150 non-medical hours done within the last 5 years. So some
Oh,
schools, they
that's a
have
lot.
expiration limits on patient care hours, and in addition to that, we have shadowing hours that we have to do. And no, even in the middle of a pandemic, a lot of schools were requiring shadowing hours that were fully in person. So even
Oh
in
my
like August,
gosh.
September 2020, I was shadowing in person. Some schools require that you shadow a PA, others require that you shadow a PA, physician, or nurse practitioner. So always check with each individual program. But long story short, I did about 200 hours shadowing with an internal medicine physician and about 110 with an outpatient cardiology PA because due to the pandemic, I couldn't shadow inpatient. A lot of the hospitals just weren't letting people in. And I did get to shadow one NP for a day, and I've spoken with a lot of NPs, but I haven't gotten to like in-person shadow NPs, if I'm being quite
Yeah.
honest.
Oh my gosh. I did not realize that you had to do shadowing or volunteering. That's hardcore. Bachelor's degree?
Yes, so some programs, we just switched to a master's degree a few years ago. ARC-PA, which is the accrediting body, made it that the entry level is a master. There are some doctoral, but that's more to like teach at a PA program, just kind of like the
Hmm.
DNP a little bit.
Okay.
But there are some direct entry now, so it's like 3+2, so it's like 3 years of undergrad and 2 years of the professional PA program. But for the
Yeah.
most part, you're doing your 4 years of undergrad, and most PA programs are 2 years. Some are 3.
Okay. Yeah. So, what I knew someone that did a PA, I think it was at Penn, like a PA undergrad, and then they capped it on the top. And I was like, that's a motivated human to know what you wanted.
Yeah, and
Like
I could have
the,
done that. I was offered a full ride for undergrad to St. John's, and I could have been in their last
Mhm.
bachelor cohort with no debt. And I turned that down to go to Fordham because I was stupid. And now I could theoretically be paying $120,000 to attend St. John's.
I feel you deep in my soul. I changed my mind away from nursing school and now owe a lot of money to loans. I'm like, oh, past self. What were you thinking? Um, is there a specific major that you have to do, or is it just like pick a major but get these prereqs done at the same time?
Yeah, I love that. This is like a great myth to bust. Please, you
Mm-hmm.
do not need to be a bio major.
Uh-huh.
Do something fun. So personally, I was a psychology major. My minors were disability studies and bioethics, and I took a couple of graduate level bioethics courses just because I got accepted to a master's in bioethics program, and just I didn't think that it was going to be the most useful thing, but I wanted to do a few for fun.
Yeah, yeah. And does that, I would imagine that that would kind of show your personality more. You know what I mean? I feel like PA schools are probably going to get a bajillion biology, like bio, whatever, all the
Yeah,
bios.
exactly.
And like you could kind of be like, look, like I took the time to learn about these other things, which obviously play really nicely into being a super well-rounded provider and advocate. And like, look at me. Like, so
Yeah, I
I
tell
think
people
that's
to do what
awesome.
they're passionate about, but just with two caveats. Number one, I tell people a quick tip is that if you're going to say, even if you're really passionate about English or maybe business, because maybe one day you want to learn the business side of healthcare, that's fine. But you could, one way to get all your prereqs in that's really useful is maybe do a bio minor. So you're getting a little bit
Hmm.
more of something out of your prereqs. So that's
Yeah.
helpful.
Hmm.
And also something unique. So some people will also do a major that can lead to some patient care. So like respiratory therapy is a common example of this. That way you get your bachelor's
Interesting.
and you could use your gap years to make some money and do
Yeah.
respiratory therapy. And that's great patient care experience. So that's another option as well. Some RNs also go to PA school, by the way, since
Hmm.
I know you're a
Oh, yeah.
nurse. I just want to talk about
Hmm.
that. I think there's one named Kyler or something on here, and he talks about going to a PA school and why he chose PA over NP. Although I think it's really tough because I know once you're an RN, a lot of places will pay for your NP.
At some places they will. Yeah. But I think, like you said, I think for a lot of nurses, it makes more sense to go to PA school, especially like if they want to go into surgery or something like that, which, like you said, NPs can go in, but it's just harder. Or if you genuinely have no idea, do I want to work inpatient or outpatient? Because nurse practitioners, if people don't know, you have to pick your patient population and your setting. So like I'm an FNP, so a family nurse practitioner. I have to pretty much work with outpatient. Like I can technically work quick turnover cases in the ER, or I could work in urgent care,
Like
but I have
urgent care.
in an
Fast track.
outpatient
You can be
setting.
fast track.
That's the word. I was like, there's a term for this. I've never worked in the ER. But I can't go and work in an ICU if I changed my mind. And so if you want to maybe have the flexibility of hopping around, then PA school is a really great option because kind of the world is your oyster in that sense.
Although I know that with some NPs, they go back, like they can do crit care and they may go back. And I think it's like a certificate or like an additional
you can do
year.
a postmaster's cert.
So if you do change your mind, it's not like you're forever shut out. It's just a little bit more of a long way. Yeah.
Just a little bit more money. It's fine. It's all fine. No, I'm a huge advocate. I appreciate you bringing it up because I think changing your mind is always fine. And you're constantly learning like, oh, I like this and not that. And it's ridiculous to ask people to know what they want to do with the rest of their life when they're 21.
Like you went into primary care and now you figured that you love nursing education.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, I hate insurance companies. I'm going to dedicate
you don't
my
want to
career.
Teach clinical.
Yeah, exactly. To taking that down. And that's totally fine to change your mind. Like, I don't think we need to punish that in any way, shape, or form. Is there anything else that you need in order to apply to PA school?
Yes. So like there's the letters of recommendations, which I know people might be like, oh, that's for any program, but they're super specific and you make sure to check with each individual program. So some programs they require, typically most programs require one letter from like a science professor, one from a provider, ideally a PA, but you can also have one from an MD or an NP depending on the program. And then one of more like an elective, so more like a supervisor of a job. And then you can upload up to 5. So I know you have nursing CAS for nursing programs. Most, but not all, and I say this, and they call it PA programs are on CASPA, which is the centralized application system for physician assistants. And yes, it is really costly. And if you look at the number that you need to make to get a waiver, I literally called up CASPA, called up the head of CASPA and told them if I made that number in New York, I'd be on the streets, not even in a homeless shelter. I'd be too poor to even get to one.
Yeah. So how does that system, while we're talking about it, work? Because that's not something that in nurse practitioner school, you apply to like every individual school. But I've seen, it's like in every single one you have to send in different applications.
No nursing CAS?
No, there's like, I mean, some places will include you in one if they have, I've seen that mostly in states where they have multiple schools within the states. So if they're all in the same funnel, but it's much more common to have to just like apply to each one.
I applied to 16 PA schools. I couldn't imagine doing that.
Yeah. So, and with CASPA, it sounds like it goes in a cycle and everybody applies like once, like when the cycle comes around. I'll let you talk about it. But I think it's fascinating to understand because I had no idea that this is how PA school worked. So how does that process
not
kind of work?
all PA schools are on CASPA, so I'll just take a moment to pause there. So the PA schools that are not on CASPA, I really recommend, I know people will complain about doing a separate application like you were saying for those nursing programs, and I'm saying this off the books. There's rumors, I don't know if it's true, but it's about 5%, not a lot, but when it comes to PA school, that is a lot easier to get into programs that are not on CASPA, and that's a myth. I don't know if it's true, but it doesn't hurt. So if you're applying to PA school, I feel like your application is at all weak. I know people have applied for 5 years before getting one acceptance.
Yeah, PA school is so competitive.
I'm very fortunate. This is my first cycle applying. I did 7 interviews.
You've done all the things, so they would be kind of silly to not say yes, in my opinion. But
but yeah, you put everything into CASPA. Those are all your letters of rec, and we are gearing up for a new CASPA cycle to open. So CASPA is going to open at the very end of April, early May.
Okay.
So you want to be asking for your letters of recommendation if you're applying to PA school. And I do have some templates that I think I'm going to. People are telling me to make an Etsy and post all my templates that I use, which also you want to make sure all your hours are logged up. And basically you put all of that stuff into CASPA, your letters, your grades, your transcripts, you do all of that. And then you basically can apply to schools with that. But there are schools that require supplementals. So because I applied to 16 schools, some required supplementals and some did not. and then some do non-rolling admissions and some do rolling admissions. So with rolling admissions, those are the ones that you're going to want to try to get in earlier in the cycle if possible. That's not to say don't meet the bare minimums and then apply, because you're just going to get rejected out the window, and that's just a waste of your money. But if you meet the minimums and you feel like you're, okay with paying for that, then go ahead and apply to those, because rolling admissions means that they read them and they'll start interviewing as things roll in. So you want to get on there. So you don't want to apply at the tail end, especially if it's your top choice school and it's like, a stretch. Like if you're planning to apply to Duke PA program, the first PA program in the country, you're definitely going to want to apply there early. But non-rolling schools like CUNY School of Medicine Physician Assistant program here in New York that I applied to, meaning they don't read them as they come in. So you can apply early if you have everything and you just want to get it off the table, but you really don't have the biggest advantage other than just making sure everything is in to apply early, because they're not going to read it until the cycle closes.
Well, that's good to know, because then you could just kind of wait and focus on the rolling admission ones.
Yeah,
and just
and
like
they
getting
may read them
that
towards the end, but they're definitely not going to read them as they come in.
Okay. And how long is that open for?
So CASPA opens in like late April, early May, and then it closes, I think, the end of March. So it's closing about now, I think, for the old cycle. And I don't know the exact dates.
Almost
I don't
like
want
a year.
I can include a link. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I've been applying for a year almost. I started my very first application that I submitted for PA school was Memorial Day weekend. I was at a bar with some friends and they told me to just pop into this open house, and it was a brand new PA program that not that many people knew about. They weren't even on CASPA yet, and I found a fee waiver code. I applied there, got up the next morning at 4 a.m., went to a Starbucks in Wildwood, New Jersey, next to the beach, applied. 5 days later, was asked to interview at this PA school, got waitlisted, didn't get off the wait list. And that was, back Memorial Day. So I've been applying for almost a full year, and I'm still under review at a few schools. So it's been a long time. Oh my
gosh. Yeah. How long is that? Like, how long does it typically take between applying and getting in? So like for reference.
That can range.
Okay. So it's kind of, that's kind of what it is for nursing
example, too. Like there's a school, I'm not going to name them on here because I don't want to get in trouble. I applied there on July 20th, 2021, and I am still under review there.
And it's March 2022, if you're listening to this.
And we send in updates. Some schools, they'll forbid you and they'll kick you out and block you forever and ever if you send in a single update. Other schools, if your application is under review, you better tell them you won the Nobel Peace Prize if you're trying to get in.
Oh my!
And then once you get waitlisted, it's a whole other journey. So some schools will want updates. They want to know you need more patient care hours, more shadowing, more. Other schools will say no updates. Some schools will rank their wait list. Other schools will not rank their wait list. Some will disclose where you rank on the wait list. Some won't. So you could have a wait list of 200 people and be number 200, and they'll still call you that you're on the wait list.
Oh my gosh.
And they can call you the day the program starts to come off of the wait list.
That happened to, that happened. I had a pre-PA. She didn't know she was going in. She was applying, and she was working at our office as an MA, and they called her 2 days before the program started and said, you need to get down here, because this was in a totally different state.
But that's really inaccessible. So I understand that they want to fill seats last minute and that theoretically you can decline it, but not everyone can afford to apply to PA school for 2 rounds. I personally can.
Yeah.
And number 2, some people deal really poorly with changes in routines. Like I have some friends who are autistic applying to PA school, and how do you tell somebody that? Or my best friend has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she's going to SLP school. Like somebody who has really chronic conditions that needs to get all of their affairs in order, they need more than 2 days to do that. And I know that PA schools say it's a privilege to even be asked to have a seat. And
but that's so toxic.
It's not appropriate.
No, that's so like she wasn't even facing like any kind of like real barrier. Like her parents were going to help her move down there, like everything. And it was still incredible. I mean, that's insanely stressful. So,
but you throw like a chronic illness and a wheelchair user on top of that. And
no, thank you. That's, but so that's
but
quite
you can't
the
afford
process.
to apply twice. So you have to say yes if you come off the day.
Yeah.
And then it's hard because certain jobs you can't give them to 2 weeks notice. But you can't quit too early because you need to save up money. The other thing is that one other thing I want to mention is that with NP versus NP, most PA schools, some of them will actually make you sign contracts that you're not allowed to work during the program.
That's a really good point.
Whereas NP schools, you can do part-time. Also, people who like the part-time school. There are a couple PA programs that are part-time. I think that Rutgers has a part-time program and Drexel and Philly.
But they're much, much less common, as I understand. And you can't work, which makes it. Then you're taking
unless
out
you
even
want to
more
be
loans.
like somebody who's gonna work off the books. I'm not saying anything, but babysitting, studying while you
Yep, exactly. But that also adds a totally different financial burden to the
Yeah,
loans
they're
and
very
everything.
expensive. The program I got into, one of them is $120,000. The other one's 110. Also, most PA programs are fully in person, whereas there are more online NP
Mm-hmm.
programs. But now
Yeah.
there are becoming hybrid PA programs, and one of the programs I was accepted to is called Franklin Pierce Hybrid PA Program, and it's a good program, but it's hybrid as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's which kind of has, I did a hybrid and pre program. So we were on campus 2 or 3 times a month for like skills labs and case studies
I
and
like
all
the
that stuff.
hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah. But all your lectures were at home for the most part, which was nice because then, like you said, you could do kind of like life in between and like figure it out. Is that kind of what PA school runs in general?
What do you mean? What
Like
PA school
100
runs?
to 125?
It depends. So the cheapest program is SUNY Downstate, which is my dream program. I love the diversity of the program. I love the location of the program. It's fully public transportation
Mm-hmm.
accessible. $36,000 for everything, basically, or 38,000.
Oh
On the
my
other
gosh.
hand, one of the other programs I got into was $120,000 before COVID.
And you're like, oh, that's, oh my gosh. And that's not even counting like housing, having to take out loans because
Yeah,
if you're
and
obviously not
also
working,
I'm
then.
now, if like God forbid I don't get off of the wait list that I'm currently on, I'm on waitlisted at 3 programs: SUNY Downstate, my top choice; CUNY School of Medicine Physician Assistant program, which is also my top choice; and University of Pittsburgh Hybrid PA program, which is one of my
Mm-hmm.
top choices. Then I'm stuck between going to a school that's 3 years long and $120,000, but they organize their rotation sites. Also, I know a lot of NPs tend to have to find their own sites. It's more common. But if I go
Mm-hmm.
to the Franklin Pierce Hybrid PA program, which I'm leaning towards because it's a year shorter, it's only 24 months, 28 months.
Yeah.
So you get out working faster and $10,000 cheaper than St. John's, although I like St. John's. I have to go and find all of my own sites if I want to do them in New
Oh my
York.
gosh.
So I've become my
Yeah.
own clinical coordinator. So if anybody wants to take me on as a site, I have to find a rotation for primary care, pediatrics, general surgery,
Ugh.
emergency medicine, and then a couple others, and I get 2 electives. So I am now coordinating my own sites. I'm talking to people every day. But it's just like with NP programs, there's a lot of, sorry to ramble, a lot of phases to this.
No,
So you
I
don't just like
appreciate it.
ask
Yeah.
somebody, you don't just say, hey, Dr. Smith, you're a pediatrician in my area. Can
Yeah.
I come to? No, even with Franklin Pierce, who's really good because they're a new program, you first have to get them to fill out a Google form, which basically says, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm even vaguely interested in precepting. Then they follow up with a clinical coordinator who sends them paperwork and shows them what they're going to get paid for precepting you. And they have to run things by. So it can't be like Dr. Joe, who's your dad's best friend. And it can't be like your
Yeah.
neighbor. And it can't be your own provider for the most part. And then
Yeah.
after that, they have to go through all of this to then get approved. So for every one site that I need, I have to find 2 to 3 potential preceptors in case one falls through because I don't
Yeah.
drive.
Oh
So
my
if anybody wants to like
gosh.
offer me any rotations, I would be eternally grateful.
Here's where we are. We will contact you. Oh my gosh. So I thought PA school always gave you your rotation. So that's eye opening because that's a
Technically,
huge
they
complaint.
do.
Oh, but
Technically, they do find you your own rotations, but they could be anywhere. So St. John's doesn't.
oh,
I have to go through their disability services and see if I can get my non-driving needs approved as an accommodation, and that's a whole other barrier because they
mm,
said that my proof wasn't good enough. So I just spent a ton of money doing a full neuropsych battery so that I can show all of that and prove all of that,
oh
even though I've had
my
tons of other accommodations
gosh.
before.
Oh, it's so that's a hot mess. Um, yeah, that's the whole preceptor situation is just such a mess. I'm glad PA school at least pays schools because NP school doesn't even do that, which a lot of times then NP students end up having to pay out of their own pocket to get a precepting site.
And
And it
that's
really,
hard. That
and
makes a
it's
class division because some people could pay more than
exactly,
others.
they can't. And like, yeah, it was like at least $700 a semester. And I was like, I didn't have that when I was in NP school.
Will
Like,
some NPs precept for free?
some will. So I always a lot will. There's like it just depends on the person. I always precepted for free. A lot of
Thank
NPs
you
I
for
know
your service.
precept. Oh my gosh. A lot of NPs precept for free. But then it comes back to like what you were saying. You have to fill out as a provider a ton of paperwork for the school.
I'm
And a
starting
lot
to
of
do that for the providers themselves.
exactly.
I feel like I could become my own clinic. Somebody told me that
You
one day I should become the clinical coordinator of a
You really
program.
should because
Um,
then it just like it de-incentivizes you to even want to do it because you're like, I'm already taking on a student, which is like I'm happy to do, but it adds work. Like everybody knows it adds work. And then you want me to fill out all this paperwork. You're like, this is not, we have to figure out a better solution.
Also, by the way, for my preceptors, so the programs allow you to have a physician, MD, DO, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant be your preceptors. So I
Oh,
am
that's nice.
reaching out to a variety of people. to try to get all my sites secured. And people are like, you're putting it way ahead, but it's when you're a non-driver, you have to think about these things because didactic year is only 12 months and then you're in clinical year. And I want to have most of my sites sorted and a backup for each of my sites before I start that, so that I'm not worrying about that during didactic year.
And when you're not worrying about it in school. And I agree. And I was booked out a year and a half in advance for when I was doing my clinicals. I was talking to nurse practitioners who were a year and a half from needing to be at my rotation. I was like,
you meaning you were going to precept those nurse practitioners?
Yeah, for when I was the preceptor. So when I was like going to be,
and some
they were going to be working
telling
with me.
Me, yeah, you're doing this too far in advance. So then I have to explain to them this entire non-driving situation and how well I have to think out everything. And then the few ones that I've had, like I found somebody who I was going to do an elective with, but unfortunately they ended up in an inpatient psychiatric facility. So I don't think that provider is really going to pull through at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's a whole mess if like there were some people I had to email like when I quit, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, because then you go to a different job and then that job might not let you precept. Yeah, it's such a mess. Oh my gosh.
So I don't know. Do you have any advice for finding like rotations for people? Because I'm trying my very best, and I'm like willing like to go to other cities and stuff as long as it's accessible by public transportation.
Yeah, LinkedIn was for me the most helpful and just but it was brutal. I mean, my school found them for you, but I found a few of my own because they were taking, it was like 4 weeks into the semester and I still didn't have clinical instructor. And like, it was already a third of the way through the semester. And LinkedIn was like how I found mine. And I called every federally qualified health center in the area because those are more likely to typically take
and
students.
Sometimes small private practices
and small
too,
private.
Then you're not going through a hospital system that says So some hospital systems will only take PA and NP and nursing students from certain schools. So they're like the run to the literature.
Yeah. And that's what we did a ton. I always had an NP student and I worked at a small private practice as a nurse practitioner. I always had an NP student. Sometimes we had PA students, like, and because the woman I worked with, she like always had students because she felt bad for people, which was really nice. But
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So small practices, I agree. And then really just coming in and presenting like what you have done and having a clear image. It was always more annoying when people came in and they're like, I need a preceptor, but like that was all the information they gave. It was like helpful to say like,
no, I have a template. I laid
exactly. This is how many hours I need. This is what I'm primarily hoping to gain, like any skills, any yada yada. This is my previous experience. So you know where I'm coming from. All of that is super duper helpful to just have up front and kind of like, here you go. Plopped in people's laps.
Exactly. But it's also hard. And I say this as a warning to other folks watching this out there who might be thinking, how am I getting shadowing hours? When you do reach out to people from LinkedIn, I have a Instagram post about how to like pre-PAs and pre-health students networking on LinkedIn. Don't ever ask for shadowing hours up front. That's kind of like just like asking for your dessert. You want to first, and this is not to be superficial, you genuinely want to get to know the people. So you want to send like a more like general, like, you know, I see you're in integrative medicine, like I'm interested in learning about that, and lifestyle medicine. I literally had a networking call at 8 a.m. today talking with this nurse practitioner who does lifestyle medicine. Very under reimbursed. But anyway, you have to do all of that. You can't just be like, I'm looking for a preceptor straight up the bat, because guess what? They probably get hundreds of those emails. So why should they pick you? So you have to first kind of like pet the puppy, so to speak, and get to know them. And then after that, you go to that next step, and then you can ask for precepting and shadowing, etc.
That's really good advice. I like how you asked for me for advice, but your advice was better. Good work. I love it. Okay, so you get into PA school. You're doing all the things. How difficult would you say getting into PA school was on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being like, I'm going to lay in a hammock and read a book, and 10 being I don't even know, trying to navigate New York City for the first time in my life without a map.
Sorry, I've grown up in New York City. You can take me on the subway blindfolded and I can get you home. I'd probably say a 9, and I say this because I probably get some people, so they take gap years after undergrad, very common, no shame in that, to apply to PA school, and they can afford to work that CNA job for $15 an hour and just sort of chill and travel. But I come from a lower income single parent household. My mom's like still partially underemployed. I have terrible insurance, so I pay out a lot of money out of pocket for things like physical therapy and therapy. And don't even get me started about how OT isn't covered by insurance. So if I want to have any executive functioning, better pay for that too.
Yeah. We'll have to have a whole separate video, and you can come in on my healthcare deep dive series, and we can just complain about the lack of access to affordable adjuvant therapies.
And I was also going through this while like switching medications and doing prior authorizations and going through an appeal process. And I was also unemployed during the pandemic. So I would say it was probably a 9 out of 10 given that.
Yeah.
And I also currently work 4 jobs.
So just all the things. Yeah.
And then I also, while you're applying to PA school, you want to keep up your hours and your patient care at least a little bit, because the PA schools, if they see that you like sat down on the couch for a minute, you're toast.
Oh, that's really helpful to know. Yeah, that like you're still actively involved in it and everything, like, yeah, you're in the system of it.
Yeah, and so it's tough because you follow up with a lot of schools. They try to ghost you. So like I got ghosted by a school that I was like literally reapplying to, and I'm a first cycle applicant, but I just applied their last cycle because they weren't on CASPA, and then I applied for their fall 2022 class. Still ghosted me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is there a typical follow-up like that you recommend doing? Like after applying to NP school, usually I just verified like, hey, did you get my application? Like I just wanted to check in, kind of touch base and say like, if you have any questions, reach out. And that's pretty standard, I think. Is that something that you typically do with like PA school programs?
So yeah, we have sort of a protocol, I guess, for that. So
Mhm.
some schools obviously late each school. So some schools, like for example, SUNY Downstate, once you apply, you are not to call them. If you call them, it is like it is the forbidden fruit. You do not do that unless it's something like, you know, my application portal crashed. I need help with like a tech issue, or
Yeah.
something like that. Some schools will allow you to contact them theoretically, but typically you never want to contact them just be like, hey, I'm following up with my application. You always have to have like
Okay.
won some sort of a Nobel Peace Prize. So
Okay.
you can't just be something small like, oh, I did a small research presentation on the importance of PAs in healthcare. No. So you got to like have like 500. So people will literally get like 500 patient care hours more just so that they can apply to like the PA school they apply to, so they can call them and update them and be like, hi, like Smith University PA
Oh my
program. I hope
gosh.
you're well. My name is so and so. I'm following up because I do have additional patient care hours. And then while you're asking and telling them about those hours, you can be like, and by the way, how's the status of my application going?
Oh my gosh. So that's a totally different culture because we follow up on our applications all the time and are probably very annoying.
But I do
Just
follow up
like,
with them. The reason why my
mhm,
applications moved along places is because you get to know the people on a first name basis. That I do
mhm.
recommend. I know the name of each admissions officer at 14 of the 16 schools I applied to.
See, that's awesome. And that's what I did. I got to know all of them. They were going to know my name when it came across their desk.
And that is how it should be. And also another thing is that reach out to alumni of the programs. I'm very lucky that I went to a small private school here in Brooklyn. And some of those alumni, since it was like a small little all-girls school, they're like really passionate alumni. And one of them happened to be the alumni of the program that I'm waitlisted at.
Perfect. You're like, please let everyone know. Just speak about me.
Yeah, and you have to be careful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who you talk to and what you say. What is there anything else about the PA school process, like application, that you want to talk about and kind of
I would say
highlight?
that we need to make it more accessible for people is a big problem. And I know, like, shout out to like some of the disabled healthcare content creators on here. So Nurse Andrea Densel, I don't know if you know her. She's the seated nurse on Instagram.
Yes.
I love her so much. She was like the
Mhm.
first full-time wheelchair using nurse in New York. Didn't even get a job in the hospital until the pandemic hit. She did a whole thing with Nurse Blake. And
Mhm.
then there's the petite PAS, and she has, I believe, post
Yes, I've seen her.
tachycardia
Mhm.
syndrome. I totally botched that, but
Mhm.
she's great. We need to make it more accessible. It's really hard to like follow up on all of these things, and like I almost missed deadlines because like I lost things and like didn't check my email, and it's like not easy. And like some people, they have the privilege of the other big thing that it's becoming an issue in the pre-PA community is that people are paying for essay reviews and mock interviews. And I
Mhm.
totally hear that. Listen, the PAs, they want to be compensated. The NPs sometimes do this too, but we need to make it more equitable. So I am going to be totally honest and say that I really disagree with those really expensive mock interviews, and I really
Mhm.
don't care if people come at me for this. I like Savannah Perry's mission. People see her on the pre-PA platform. Have you seen her?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
No.
she's like a big pre-paid content creator. No shame
Yeah.
to her, but she charges hundreds of dollars for the mock interviews, for the essay reviews, and it makes it inequitable because now it's becoming the standard. I had a girl tell me, "Oh, I didn't get groceries as much this week because I wanted to have a mock interview with her because
Oh my
all that stuff she had
gosh.
to do," and that's not equitable. If you're gonna do it equitably, do
No.
it sliding scale. I know an awesome first generation Muslim PA. She does the essay reviews, but she charges like $40 for a full review on the low end. What if you're a single mother on food stamps? So if you can pay the full price, obviously she would like you to pay it if you're rich and can pay the full price.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that I totally agree. I
And
think the
Savannah
way
doesn't she's not open to that. Like, I'm no shame to her. I know she publishes great content. It's in my Linktree, like a free personal statement bootcamp thing. But like, you
Yeah.
cannot offer hundreds of dollars of that and then not offer a sliding scale option and not address disability openly in your webinars. So
Yeah.
it's a big barrier to access. Also,
Oh,
people who are
for
in
sure.
wheelchairs who need shadowing can't even find offices that are wheelchair accessible. So they literally just didn't apply to PA school because of that.
And I feel like that's such a huge thing that you're right. Like healthcare education in general is so inaccessible and not flexible. And it's just not a good look. So I'm super glad that you're like bringing awareness to that.
Have you done like essay reviews and stuff for your NP students applying to the programs?
No, because I'm really bad at essays. I'm not the example of what to do when applying to anything, because that was my like current ADHD fixation, was like, I'm gonna apply to NP school. And then I did it and didn't really think about it again and kind of like put it away. And I was like, I'm just gonna hyper fixate and then it's gone.
Yeah, it becomes
And
very
now we're here.
overwhelming. Like, I feel like I
It
couldn't live
does.
my life while applying to PA school, but like you have to
Yeah.
remember that like this is like not normal. So you still
Mhm.
have to like live a normal life and just go out on a random Tuesday sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally feel that. Okay. So now you got in. What timeline does this look like? Like, are you starting potentially in the fall, or what does this kind of look
So
like?
yeah, each of the programs, they start at different times. I don't know how exactly the NP programs work, but a lot of them do start in the fall. So for example, St. John's that I got into here in New York, but I just wish a fairy could come and like cut the price down by half. But you know, that would never happen. They start in, I think, September. And then Franklin Pierce, they start like a week before Thanksgiving. Which
Oh,
I would love
interesting.
to go to Franklin Pierce because it is like $10,000 cheaper and a year shorter. No
Yeah.
shade to St. John's. I love St. John's program. If money was no issue, I
Yeah.
could go in there right now. But I am just really hoping to secure all my clinical sites so that I could go to Franklin Pierce, save it your time, and save $10,000 on money.
Yeah.
And I like the hybrid learning style because I get really
Mhm.
overwhelmed, like being with all these people who can like study at a much quicker pace and read. And I feel really
Yeah.
bad about myself when I'm surrounded by that for too long.
I feel
But
you.
if I don't get all my sites secured in time, I'm going to have to go to St. John's.
Yeah. And oh, okay. So everyone come help her get her site secured. Number
Yeah,
one.
we have
That's what
mandatory
we'll
women's
focus
health,
on.
pediatrics, primary care. Any
Oh,
electives are helpful, but my particular interests are like geriatrics and hospice and palliative care.
oh, I love it. So that was going to be one of my last questions, was what do you know what you want to go into?
Yeah, two things. So actually, a few more than two. Sorry to rant, but that's also
No.
like my ADHD hyperfixation. So like, I find new specialties all the time, and like,
Yeah.
that's cool. I saw it on Reddit last night.
Uh-huh. Yep, I've done that all the time. I'm gonna watch
But
all the YouTube videos on it. Okay, perfect. That's what I'm gonna be when I grow up.
yeah, a couple things. I was supposed to do a perinatal hospice internship right before the
Mm.
pandemic started, but that got canceled. And that was really cool. I learned about that in bioethics. If people don't know who are watching this, it's hospice for like unborn children. So they literally are
Mhm.
preparing for end of life care before the child has come out of the womb.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's like a lot of, it's very niche, but yeah, not a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
it's
people work in it.
highly impactful. For one of my really good friends, her daughter was diagnosed with a genetic abnormality that was not going to be compatible outside the womb. And they did that. They did a program like that where they were doing palliative care for the remaining, I think, 3 or 4 months of her pregnancy once they figured it
Yeah,
out.
and
And
if
that
they
was
choose
like,
to terminate, like to anybody who chooses that, that's of course
mhm,
should be an option. But some people they found like
mhm,
it's a very healing process if they get to have the
mhm,
birthing experience, and I feel like
mhm.
they should also have the choice if that's something that they would like.
And that was hugely impactful for her, just like how much support she received through that, versus I've seen with a lot of my patients who have not had that experience, like that I mean, it's so heartbreaking either way, but it's so much harder when you don't have any, like a system that is kind of there that you kind of know what you're getting, like that's going to be able to support you and give you things to help you remember and all of those things throughout that. So those
Yeah,
programs are
I
awesome.
like the hospice and palliative. I like geriatrics, but then the other interest of mine is to eventually, hopefully, like once I get some clinical practice under my belt as a PA, I do want to go to law school and hopefully use that law degree to like break down the legal barriers for PAs and NPs. Number one, you need to unite, and number two, there are just so many bureaucratic barriers that like we need somebody, and like there's not a lot of JDPAs. Although I've met the few that I've dug up from LinkedIn, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
to sort of use that duality to break down these barriers.
Yeah. And before we were recording, we were talking about, I was complaining that I was telling her that this is perfect because she's going to go and run the world and change it. And I'm going to rant on the internet about it. So you're going to be a little bit more effective, I think. Nurse practitioners can't, there's just silly little barriers
Diabetic
that
shoes.
diabetic shoes, practitioners can't order diabetic shoes. Like, why can I do, like, there are a lot more scary things that I do than order diabetic shoes. And you were saying that PAs, something with palliative care.
Yes. So I did my senior thesis on the use of PAs in hospice and why are they underutilized and why are there only like literally like 100 in the entire country working on hospice. And it turns out, so even though Medicare did break down barriers, meaning that NPs were always really like at the forefront, and nursing unions are amazingly strong. I talked about this in my PA school interviews. We need PA unions, nursing unions, support 100%. Go support your local nursing union.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we have a lot of barriers to overcome, and because we don't really have a strong union, and the profession is a baby. It was literally 1967 with 4 Navy corpsmen at Duke by Dr. Eugene Stead. So yeah, it's a very new profession.
Yeah. And PAs can't do palliative care. That was like
They theoretically can.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a lot of barriers. They can't get reimbursed for certain aspects of it. So nobody wants to hire a PA if you can't use them for half the things, which I understand. But why? Because we're
that's the
and that and in home health. Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Which is a problem because we have a massive home health shortage.
Huge.
We have people growing older, but nobody to care for them, and nobody wants to work in geriatrics. So take it on. Give me the geriatric patients.
Oh my goodness. Thank goodness for you. I love talking to them, but their medical history just scares me. I'm like, oh, you have a lot happening in your body. But I like talking to them.
Yeah.
They just frighten me when I actually have to like prescribe something for them. And I'm like, oh,
when I shouted an internal med, sometimes their med list was like 23 meds long.
That's what I mean. And then they're like, I think I'm having headaches. I'm like, yeah, I bet you are.
They're like a very stereotyped population that nobody actually knows how to like de-escalate. But like I really enjoy de-escalating like Alzheimer's patients.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm so glad the world has people like you.
I don't know why people find old people so scary. I think that it's the young people that actually scare me.
Yeah. See, I love the young people. I love the sassy little teenagers. Yeah. Oh, I love them. Like as soon as they
That's going to be Avery soon.
Yeah. I just love them. I loved working peds with them. And now like I was like the high school, like all the people brought me their like high schooler and like junior high kids. And I just loved them. Perfect.
The population I want to avoid.
Yeah, see, and that's what the beautiful thing of it is. You can just, everyone has their little thing. What is there anything else that we didn't really talk about that you kind of want to highlight in the pre-PA world? And then when you graduate, we'll just have you back and you can talk about all the PA things and how PA school was and all of that.
I think that the 2 biggest things, sorry to like rant, I've like touched on this a little bit, but making the system like more accessible for like lower income individuals, like the application things. I would love to one day like start a fund and maybe like help to pay for some people's like application fees, like sort of like a GoFundMe for like students. And if everyone will donate like $5, we could maybe like award that to some folks who wouldn't otherwise apply to PA school, but who might make $1 too much to get the CASPA fee waiver, which if you know anything, CASPA fee waiver, you can apply to one school with that. And guess what?
One?
You can apply to more than one school because right now the PA programs to get in, and this is not to speak poorly, but from the research I've done, and I can't confirm this with hardcore evidence, so please nobody come at me on the internet, but it's harder to get into right now than medical school.
Oh, yeah.
1 out of every 3 people who apply to PA school this year will be offered even a single seat.
Yeah. I think PA school is like the hard, like.
It's a 3, right now they said like a 5% acceptance rate. Some schools have a 1% acceptance rate. One of the schools I got into, somebody I know is reapplying for the 3rd time there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just. Oh, is there anything like any resources that you do recommend? Obviously, other than what you provide, and we'll leave all of that link down below.
Connect with PAs who are willing to help you out, and it's also a privilege because some people have providers in their own community. People are like, if you can't, some people are now paying for shadowing, which is another problem. Don't want to go on that, right? But if you have providers in your own community, just go shadow them. That's not helpful. If you're somebody from a low-income community who's not surrounded by doctors and nurses left and right, you're not going to have that privilege. I am privileged. My grandmother lives in one of the richest neighborhoods in Brooklyn and happens to go to the hairdresser with a physician who's super nice. And how did I get to shadow in the middle of a pandemic with a really kind physician who literally bought us lunch every single day? Connections. And I recognize that privilege and accept it. And I don't think that it should be that way. And I think that we need to have more PAs and NPs who are willing to just let people shadow them. And number 2, I think that we need to make the application and interview process more accessible. maybe give flexible deadlines. Like people with ADHD, like almost has a deadline like me, and then get yelled at, and I had to like fake like a doctor's note, like like
Yeah.
just for like a summer program, not even a PA school.
Yeah.
And yeah, just making it more accessible. Like some people who are autistic, having to mask your autistic symptoms just to get into a PA school. And I think that people who give advice to pre-PAs and pre-health students need to be aware of that. So like truly being yourself, like that's not something that everyone has the privilege to do in an interview in PA school. So some people have to mask who they truly are to get into the PA school, and then theoretically they can be who you like. They can be themselves, but that's a privilege.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I'm so excited that you like exist on the internet and in real life, but like that you're raising all of these points, because I think these are things that we don't talk about a lot, that we kind of just like, I haven't felt it. So like, or it's not on my radar. And they're definitely things that need to be brought up and talked about a whole lot more, especially with like you said,
reasonable accommodations. Also, like when you're a PA working,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to like ask for job accommodations, even if you don't think you're gonna need them. Just have them so you don't get burned out if that applies to you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're allowed to stand up for yourself and you don't have to be a martyr. It's a job.
The hospital will go on without you if you take a day off, as you put it.
Yes, it really, really, really will. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I think it was really helpful just to see the pre-PA process, because obviously I've never done it. But it was wildly helpful. And I know, I honestly
the
like,
grass is greener on the other side.
I have no envy for pre-PA people who are looking at PA school, because I've worked with so many people who were planning on applying to like who were in the process of it, and they were stressed. I was like, that's a lot. Oh my gosh. No, me neither.
It gave me insomnia and anxiety. So
yeah, for sure. It gave me almost anxiety just like watching them and helping them. One of them just found out she did get into PA school too.
Oh,
So
she got in. Congratulations.
I'm very excited for her. I told her it was all because of my letter that I wrote, that now that I'm talking to you,
ask your letter writers early on. That's a big tip.
She did. She asked
super early.
Super duper early.
And some people will make you write your own letters. I've heard of that. I'm not going to say that I know that that's ever happened to anybody, but yeah, in New York City, people don't have time to write letters.
Yeah.
But they go write it and send it back to me.
She gave me points that she wanted to see, like to incorporate, which I really liked.
I like that.
She said,
always send your letter writers points and your resume and transcripts.
That's exactly what she did. She sent me like something so that I could obviously fill in exactly how I felt, but it gave me points to actually reference, rather than being like, she's real nice and a go-getter. Like,
and really be careful who your letters writers are. You want like any aspect that you control over your application, control that aspect of your application. Yeah. And always write thank you notes after interviews. Have them pre-drafted before your interviews. Keep a template in the email.
And let us know how it goes. Like, I was super glad that she updated me. She's like, oh, I got this PA school interview. And then she just told me that she got
it. And thank them. Even if it's just a little token of appreciation, like send them like a Starbucks gift card. Guess what? They like coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like she probably follows you, because she just
did little Christmas gift cards to like all the folks that helped with my applications.
Oh, that's the sweetest. If you think of any other resources, absolutely let me know, and I will leave them linked down here. And then if you come out with those templates, let me know and I'll link them in here down below too. If you
and I will link to my Instagram bio with some of those things.
Perfect. So I will leave all of Mira's information down below. You should definitely go follow her, even if you're not pre-PA, because I just think she has wonderful discussions on the internet and brings up a lot of really good points that are otherwise not always mentioned on there.
And I want to put some like mental health resources in my Instagram bio too. Like I know a lot of people pre-PA process, like a lot of stress and anxiety, and nobody can really afford therapy. So that's also a problem. And the school counseling center is just absolutely awful.
Oh yeah. Just deep breaths. Take deep breaths. You'll be fine. You're like, oh, like go away. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon. I super duper appreciate it. And I'm excited to do some follow-up videos where you're like in PA school and then after PA school, because you're now my PA person. So congratulations.
Hopefully. I'm sure you have a lot of PA people, hopefully, with all your connections.
Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you have a fabulous evening, day, whatever this is.
You. And I get to go review resumes for my job now.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.